Bob, got the microphone?
I got it.
Okay, do you have a question for Gino?
Yeah. Gino, the primary prerequisites for any politician, whether city, county, state, or federal level, is ethical conduct colored with unfailing honesty. As a realtor working on a commission basis, there are times when maintaining this type of integrity could jeopardize the transaction and commission. When placed in this circumstance, have you ever failed to act ethically, honor your fiduciary responsibility to your client or the client of another realtor involved as a sub-agent, or made any misrepresentation in order to avoid financial jeopardy to yourself?
I believe 3 or 4 years ago, when Envy Nightclub was in the process of being licensed, there was an issue came up through the previous administration, and I acted inadvertently because I was unaware that we, and I'm saying Premier Properties, was the listing agent of the property when there was indeed an offer on the table from a competing broker. I was not aware that we had that property listed. We, at the time, I think we had something like 189 listings, and as the broker, I'm not fully aware of every transaction in full detail that goes across my desk. And I did vote that that be favorable, and I think there's something in my personnel file that identifies that. But yes, I did make that mistake once because I wasn't aware that we had that property listed. Thank you.
Thank you, Gino.
Kent, do you have a question for Rich?
Rick, under what circumstances should the city consider going into more debt? And at what point should debt only be approved by a vote of the people?
Well, I think it'd be a pretty extreme circumstance. Perhaps the situation earlier mentioned about seeking an alternate power source. There's no way that our city could buy the existing substations and transmission lines and distribution lines without a bond issue. And any bond issue, of course, I think must be approved by the voters. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't think that's a course of action with regard to the Overton Power District at this point. So I don't see any situation where the city would need to go into debt, and I would stay away from that to the maximum extent that I could.
Thank you.
I'm shy. Guess what, Barbara? You have a question for Cindy Delaney?
Yes, I do. No. Yeah, well then you've got some upset people here, girl. Union negotiations are coming up for a new labor contract with the city's firefighters. Would you agree to privatizing ambulance services other than emergencies as a way to save long-term personnel costs for the city? And what would that entail, in your opinion?
You know, I think we talked about this the last time that I ran, which was a couple years ago, so it's been on the horizon for a couple of years. And the thing about it is that oftentimes when you wind up in the ER at Mesa View, you do wind up going to St. George or Las Vegas. When you talk about privatizing those services, some of our guys have even talked about being involved in that, so as a second job. It would be quite complex, but it could work, because actually what happens is when, let's say I have a heart attack, I go to Mesa View. They can't treat me there because they don't have a cath lab, so I have to go to St. George. Some of our guys are then taken out of shift and have to go to St. George. Gives you less firefighters on duty here. So I think, yes, it's a possibility that we would have to look at. A lot of the guys have talked about it. It's been done in other places. And, you know, a lot of times that trip to St. George through a private company could actually wind up costing you less on your insurance. I think it's something we would definitely have to look at. There are a lot of variables that go into that. I mean, a trip to Vegas on LifeFlight or a trip to Vegas, like I said, we take a couple of our guys out of the mix. What happens to the next person that has a heart attack? And let's face it, we're all a little older in this town, so that could happen. And in fact, probably has happened. They have to call in somebody to do overtime. And I think that, you know, when you look at the salaries of our firefighters, go to transparentnevada.com, tell you the salary of every public employee in the state. Our guys aren't overpaid. So I think we really have to take a look at what's best for them and what's best for the community and then decide from there.
Do you have a question for Gino?
Yeah, I do. Gina, would you like to continue the city's public-private joint development agreement partnerships? Why or why not?
I'm sorry, Bob,
Would you like to continue the city's public-private joint development agreement partnerships? Why or why not?
yeah, I see no shortcomings with them. And I'm not sure that there's a tremendous amount of gain with it, but I don't think if it's, first of all, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We've had some of these in the past that obviously didn't work, but I think we've pretty much rid ourselves of those agreements that were not beneficial to the city. But I think it's got to be viewed on a case-by-case basis. If it's going to be beneficial to the city or mutually beneficial to both parties, I think we still have to consider working with them. I don't believe we have anything currently on the table that's going to be presenting an issue at the moment. We've pretty much washed our hands of most of the dead wood that we had, but I certainly would review everything on a case-by-case basis and see where it might take us. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina.
Kent, do you have a question for Sandra?
Sandra, can you explain why Nevada's open meeting law is a good thing, or do you consider it an encumbrance?
I think Nevada's open meeting law is the core of what every organization should have. When you're allowed to be on a board, any board, whether it be council, water, public business, private business, you need to not be off in a corner talking to each other and then coming back and making decisions. Open meeting laws are there for you to, if you have a question and it's brought up properly, you can research it and then you can act upon it. But when you're off getting into conversations with 3 or more people or 4 or more, depending on what your size of your board is, I think that's totally improper.
Thank you.
Barb, do you have a question for Rich Green? Rich? I'm sorry it comes up that way.
Cindy, Rich, no, I'm sorry. Rich, your campaign slogan says Cindy means business. Just kidding.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that.
Rich, what is the proper role for elected officials to intervene on behalf of private citizens or businesses with another city department or public government entity?
Can you explain that a little bit more, Barbie?
This goes to ethics. This was given to me by a reader, but it goes to ethics. What is the proper role for elected officials to intervene on behalf of private citizens or private businesses with another city department or public government entity?
I think I would see limited situations where an elected official should do that, to intervene. I think I think the citizens have not only responsibilities, but they have a right to take up an issue with somebody at the city. And I would see, I can't think of one now, but I would see very limited situations where an elected official should intervene with that right.